Meetup.com. People want to meet online. Great. We all know what it is. And if you don't, then catch up. You probably have your finger on the pulse on growing trends, probably in some extent. What are people trying to get together and do? Tell us, what inside information can you tell us about different trends?
Okay, sure. So trend number one is, and this is shocking, finding friends, which I referenced earlier, was not one of the top items that people look for in Meetup. It was always tech, hiking, other things. The number one item, that searched item on Meetup today, is finding adult friends. And I think that became much more acute during the pandemic than any other time. Before the pandemic, people would go to work and they'd see their friends all day and they'd hang out with them and they'd go out to work afterwards and they'd maybe go to a Meetup event or another event after work in the office. It was much different and much easier. Then when people are secluded, how do you find friends? And it's become such a more greater challenge than ever has been. So greater trend around that. Outside of that, a number of people who—
Wait, hold on. Wait, I have a question about that, actually.
Right.
And it's more, I guess, about product focused in a sense. People are searching in Meetup, like find adult friends.
Yeah, literally, that's the number one search.
And then Meetup. Like what comes up? Like Meetup, hey, come meet strangers, or like,
oh my gosh,
or is it? I mean, it also sounds slightly pornographic, but or is it like find adult friends who like Frisbee, or you know what I mean, or I don't know, like
yeah. So when that comes up, we because our search has a lot of machine learning kind of algorithms in it, we know a lot of people's interests. So we have broad friend groups. Like, for example, there's a group called the International Friends Network, and they're in like 10 different cities in every time zone. They operate 24/7, where it's on Zoom. Anyone could come on at any point in time. They want to see people. They feel introverted. They just need a human connection, and they come on to that. That's front and center, straight on friends. Next level down is we have thousands of groups, I would say, that are specifically for introverts, helping introverts meet other people, getting out, doing things. Lots of groups for introverts. And that's great because Meetup has always been kind of serving people that sometimes a little bit harder to find their people.
Do introverts want to necessarily
so it's a good question.
Pursue this? I mean, like, I'm a huge extrovert. My wife is a huge introvert.
Right.
And so
here's the answer. Yeah. Introverts, obviously, as you know, get their energy from more solitary actions, whereas extroverts get their energy from, doing things like we're doing right now, talking and meeting people. We see a huge increase around January New Year's resolutions, specifically for introvert groups. What very many introverts feel is, hey, I'm introverted. My natural inclination is to stay home. I would like to change some things about myself. Some introverts don't, but many introverts will say, I would like to become more effective in terms of communicating with others. It's hard for me, but I want to make an effort to do so. So many, I'm not going to say all, but many introverts, and your wife might not be one of them, actually will say, I would like to become better in this. How can I become better in this in a safer, more comfortable environment? If I go to a group with other introverts as well, that's a more comfortable place for me to be able to meet people.
Got it. Right. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes my energy is too much for my wife.
And then the third level, and by the third level is just, we know a lot of information. So if someone says finding adult friends, then on a search, there will also show up of like, we know you're into Frisbee, the Frisbee group, into whatever, backgammon, the backgammon group, the chess group, whatever it is in your city.
Awesome. Okay, so what are the trends coming up? Back to my original question.
Yeah. So another
people searching for, what are people doing more now than they were 3, 6, 12 months ago that they're looking for? What meetups do you see seeing exponential growth?
Yeah. So the sport that is increasing dramatically across the globe. It went from like 100 meetup groups before the pandemic to over 1,000 meetup groups today. Is pickleball.
Yeah, I just learned what that was this summer. Yeah,
it's a phenomenon.
People like all about it.
Everyone is playing pickleball. Sure. So pickleball is a combination, they say, of 3 sports: tennis, ping pong, and chess. Ooh, meaning it's very strategic. The way the pickleball works is it's on a court about a third the size of a tennis court with a net. If people have ever played paddle tennis, it's a similar type sport, but you use not a pickleball, because what the heck's a pickleball, but use a giant wiffle ball and paddles, and instead of kind of a tennis racket and strings. And people are playing it. I just played it in LA last week, and we couldn't even get a court for to wait for a long time. And then I just played it, you know, again in New York, and it's just growing like crazy on Meetup and elsewhere.
Awesome. Well, can you share some other trends that maybe would reflect more on society, not just hobbies?
Yeah, sure. So one is just seeing certain cities where the number of events and the number of events related to kind of getting out and building relationships is kind of increasing on a significant basis. So for example, for some reason, I can't tell you why, but in the United States, the city that is the most extroverted, where people are wanting to go out and do things the most on a per capita basis, is Atlanta, Georgia. Very social place. And around the country, around the world, the number one most social city in the entire world, where people are just on a per capita basis wanting to go out and do things and build relationships, is actually Dublin, Ireland, which is, you know, there's a lot of tech going on.
Is that because the weather's such shit and no one ever goes outside?
I couldn't tell you why. Atlanta, that's not the case. It's nice weather there.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of positive, actually, tech energy and young energy that's happening in Dublin, Ireland. If you haven't been there in a while, it's a really amazing place to go to. I've spoken at a few conferences there. So that's certainly another trend that is happening. Larger societal trend. Yeah, here's another one. This is so shocking, but believe it or not, board game groups are growing like crazy.
So why? Do you think board games, like maybe like during the lockdowns,
bingo,
they were playing online and then they were back to in person or something? Or
I think people were playing, first of all, people couldn't go out. So a lot of families, our family, many other families I know, were playing board games at home. There were a lot of board games that are happening, and people just, it wasn't, if you wanted to do something besides watching, you know, some technology and do something together, there's a lot of people playing board games. And after the pandemic, no one wants to play board games as much anymore, because now you could go out and do lots of things. So people are like, how do I get my board game fix? And there's literally thousands of board game groups that sprung up around the world. I think it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing because it's a way for people to connect around a common passion, and board games is a great way to kind of meet other people in a comfortable setting.